Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of January. January was a fantastic reading month for me, and I'm really excited to talk about it. Yes, I am filming this video at the end of February. I meant to film it at the end of January, didn't happen. But we're here now, and that's all that matters. Okay, so in the month of January, I read 8 books. One of them was a reread. 3 of them I read physical copies of books, 3 I read on Kindle, and 2 I listened on audio. And my average star rating was 4.7. That's incredible. Can we just cheer for that or something, because that's amazing. And I read my first ever fan fiction. I felt like I accomplished something as a reader doing that, and I'm so glad I read it. And finally, I found my new favorite series, and I'm just so excited to talk about it. So let's just get to talking about the books that I read in January. Okay, the first book that I read this month was Beartown by Fredrik Backman, and I adored this book. I read it so fast, and I'm not much of a general fiction reader, so it was one of those books that I was a little bit nervous to go into because I really didn't know how I was going to like it. And often people just describe it as a book about a town that loves hockey. And I kind of didn't know what that meant literally at all. And so I was honestly kind of going into the book basically blind. And I loved it. I honestly feel bad, but there is no other better description to talk about the book than say it's about a town that loves hockey. So if you are also confused by that and don't understand how a whole book could just be written about that, read it, because it's actually a trilogy, I believe. I haven't read the other 2 yet. They're on my list to read. But it's so good. It covers so many different points of view, which usually I don't love when books have 1 million point of views, because it gets kind of confusing. But for this book, it actually really worked, and it was just such a cool, I don't know, it was just such a cool story. And I don't want to tell you a whole lot because it was kind of really cool going in blind. I will say look up trigger warnings, because it was a really heavy book. So don't go into the book thinking it's going to be light and fluffy, because it's not at all. But it's just a really raw story and definitely worth the read. I forgot to say I rated that 4.5 stars. The next thing I read this month was my very first fan fiction, and I read Manacled. It was too good. So if you don't know what Manacled is, it is a Dramione fan fiction, and that, if you don't know what that means, that's the ship name for Hermione Granger and Draco Malfoy in Harry Potter. I did not get the hype of Dramione fan fiction for the longest time because I am a hardcore fan of Hermione and Ron. Their endgame, love them. So I didn't think reading a Hermione fanfiction would be enjoyable for me because I didn't ship them at all. Well, this book changed my mind, and it blew my mind, and it was so good. I don't want to hear any judgment because I know it's fanfiction, and fanfiction probably has a bad reputation, but it was literally so good. I do feel bad recommending it because I don't think you can access it literally anywhere anymore. It was originally on AO3 and it was taken off of there December 31st, I believe, because it's going to be traditionally published. At least that's what I've heard. So now you can't access it anywhere, unfortunately. But I downloaded it on my Kindle, so I have it forever. But it basically takes place if in Harry Potter, essentially if Voldemort won, if he defeated Harry. So Harry dies in Manacled, and pretty much you follow what the wizarding world looks like with Harry being dead and Voldemort being the winner of the wizarding war. It's essentially Handmaid's Tale set like with Harry Potter, which was extremely hard to read. Like this book was so hard to read. You'll see a theme of this month. I read the most sad books I've ever read in my life, and it was unintentional. But Manacled is like not a light read. Like it's like 1,000 pages of heartbreak, honestly. So also massively look up trigger warnings for it too. But it was just so good. It was so fun to read about Harry Potter characters because I haven't read new content from Harry Potter characters. I mean, since I read Deathly Hallows when I was 11. And so getting to see Harry Potter characters, it was just so fun. Like it was, I mean, the book itself was not fun, but it was fun to see more content from my beloved Harry Potter characters. But it was just such a good book, and I rated it 5 stars. And I buddy read it with my best friend, and that was the best experience, buddy reading it with her. So shout out Harley. Loved buddy reading Manacled with you. The next thing I read in the month of January was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I reread this one. I have not reread Harry Potter ever. Like I just read it once when I was like 11 or 12. And I like this year I wanted to reread it. So I reread the first 3 books at the end of last year. And then I reread Goblet of Fire this month, or we're in February now, so last month. And it was so good. Rated it 5 stars again. I have no words other than just I love Harry Potter and I love the Wizarding World. And if you've never read Harry Potter for whatever reason, please go and read it because I was a little bit nervous to reread it in the sense of like they're like middle grade books and I hadn't reread it. So obviously when I read it for the first time, I was the directed audience of middle grade. But it was just as good now, if not better. I have no words. Harry Potter, like, it's such a good series and it will never let me down. I love it. And I listened to the audio for the first time. Harry Potter on audio, amazing, incredible. Jim Dale, I believe, is the narrator. Absolutely killed it. Like, brought the story so much to life. I felt like I was like watching the movie while I was just listening to it. It was incredible. Next, I read Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare, and this is the second book in the Infernal Devices series. And I'm not gonna lie, I read this about a month ago at this point, and I don't remember a whole lot about it. Reading this series was the first time I've read anything written by Cassandra Clare, and I do feel like if I had read this series when I was younger, I would have really loved it, but for some reason it just feels a little juvenile to me. Probably it just feels really YA, and it just didn't really stick out to me. I did rate the book 4 stars because I did really enjoy it. I listened to it on audio. I think. Yes, I did. Sorry, I have my handy dandy notes in front of me. Because I really did enjoy it while listening to it, but now that I'm a month out from it, I don't remember a single thing that happened, which is unfortunate because I still have 1 book left of the series. So I'm going to have to really jog the memory to remember what even happened in the book. But if you want to read a really YA fantasy, like it's urban fantasy, I would recommend the series. But it just, I don't know, didn't really stick with me. But I had an enjoyable time reading it. Now we come to the time in the video when I get to talk about my new favorite series that I found, and that is The Boys of Tommen. This series, not to be dramatic, it changed my life. Like, it literally changed my life. I read Binding 13, Keeping 13, and Saving 6 all in January. And I could have finished the whole series, but I did have to take a break from reading it because it made me so emotional. So I literally had to pause on the series. But I could have read the entire series this month. And these books are like thick. I wish I had one to show you, but it's like a big book. Like they're minimum 600 pages. And This series literally it just changed my life. It's if you haven't read The Boys of Tommen, you need to go read it immediately right now. I have wanted to read this series for a long time, but I was honestly scared to read it because a lot of people say it's like really gives Wattpad-esque vibes, and I was a little nervous, but it was truly perfection, and I'm obsessed with every single book. Basically, the Boys of Tommen series takes place right now. There's 5 books out. The 6th book is coming out. I don't know when, but hopefully soon. The first 2 books are about Johnny and Shannon, and then the next 2 books are about Shannon's brother Joey and his girlfriend Aoife, and then the 5th book is about Gibbsy and Claire, and Gibbsy is Johnny's best friend, and Claire is Shannon's best friend. So they're all connected with each other. And the found family in these books, if you love found family, read these books immediately. Like, this is the best found family I have ever read. These books are also extremely traumatizing. Like, they are marketed as young adults. I personally would not recommend these books to anyone under the age of 18 ever. They're really hard themes, and like on page you see really tough stuff. So I personally would not recommend them to anyone under the 18. But that's also up to you. The author's note at the beginning, I think Chloe Walsh says that they're geared for 16 and above. But they do have mature content, but they are absolutely amazing. I have now finished the whole series. I read the last 2 in February. These books are about, essentially, like the first 2 are about, like, it's like a rugby romance. Essentially, they're in high school. It takes place in Ireland, which is so fun. I do have to say, I do sometimes feel like they're speaking a different language because there's so much Irish, I don't know, slang or just words that people use that we don't use in America. Um, and there's like a whole glossary that I had to refer to multiple times because I just genuinely had no idea what they were saying. You do catch on by the time you get to the last book, you kind of have learned. But the first book, I was definitely like, I have no idea what they're saying. So, yeah. These characters are like the most attached I think I've ever been to characters ever. I have not felt this feeling of reading a book since I read Selection when I was 12 years old. The 2 series that are like the closest to my heart are Percy Jackson and Selection. And I was 11 and 12 when I read those, and I have never felt so connected to a series since I read those. And I just honestly thought I'll just never feel that like connection to a book ever again. And then I read Boys of Tommen, and I was stunned to feel that feeling again. And I literally could talk about these books for an entire video, but I'm gonna have to cut myself off because I literally could talk about them forever. I don't even know if I really told you what the book's about, but just trust me, it's so good, and go read it immediately. And if you have read it, talk to me about it because I could talk about these books for the rest of my life. The last thing I read this month was My Phony Valentine by Courtney Walsh, and it was a really cute, super quick read. I flew out of town last month, and I had 2 flights, and I read the whole book on my flights, and it was engaging and like really captured me quickly, and I absolutely loved it. It's a hockey romance, closed door, and super cute. It was definitely a perfect book to read around Valentine's Day. I know we've already passed Valentine's Day, so you can either wait till next year and pick it up, or also it didn't have like a ton to do with Valentine's Day, so you didn't have to read it around there. But it was really cute. Loved it, honestly. I rated it 4 stars. And Courtney Walsh has another book in like, I forget what the series is called. It's like Holidays with a Heart, something like that. That's probably not it. But there's another book about St. Patrick's Day that I will be reading in the month of March because this one was really cute. And I'm obsessed with hockey romances, and it was just so good. Thank you for listening to me rant and rave about the books that I read in the month of January. I love talking about books, and so I could talk about books forever, but I will cut myself off here. And I'm hoping to make one of these videos every month talking about the books that I read. So, considering it's the end of February, you will probably see the books I read in February pretty soon because I will film that video faster than I filmed this one. So, hope you enjoyed today's video. And if you read any of these books, please let me know. And happy reading. Bye, guys.